Rosie and Arden's love story seems to be heading towards a happy ending. But when Rosie's past returns in the form of a deadly messenger, she is forced to confront the truth she once fled from. With news that threatens not only the entire pack but also the bond between Rosie and Arden, how will she face this challenge, protect her new family, and settle her past? Join our pack. Subscribe to start your adventure. 18 Bliss. The whole week passed by in a blur, but yet, with the speed of an old turtle, my acceptance into the pack was currently temporary, and it would be so until Arden verbally accepts me into the Sangre Lacos pack as a Luna. But since Castile was the beta, he at the moment had the power to take me in. The blood of the alpha and words of the beta made me the Luna temporarily. The pack followed my every order, and along with Castile we tried to find out what made this rogue attack so successful. The rogue attacks were done in a lot of packs, and almost all the strong alphas in the neighboring packs had been targeted. Every day I would sit next to Arden and tell him about what I did that day and what was my plans for the next day was. Luna. I turned around and saw Ben running in my direction. I was currently on my way to the cells where the captured prisoners were kept. Ben's face looked happy, and the first thought that struck my mind was Arden. He's awake. I sprinted in full speed to the clinic and threw the door open. Arden was sitting against the uncomfortable backrest of the bed that was slightly raised using pillows. The pack doctor was checking Arden, and the minute his eyes met mine he gave me a wide smile. Hey. He smiled and I felt tears well up in my eyes once again. I went to stand beside him and bent down slightly to look into the beautiful gray eyes of my mate. Don't cry, I'm all right. He brushed his hand over my eyes, wiping away the eager tears. From the corner of my eyes I saw the doctor slip out of the room. Arden probably saw it too, since he gave me a cheeky grin. Doc's giving us some privacy, why don't you give me a lovely long kiss? He teased me. He was expecting me to blush and look away or maybe become angry, but what I did next was mostly the last thing he expected. Kissed him. This wasn't my first kiss, and I knew that it wasn't his either, but it was special. The minute my lips touched his, he froze before relaxing. I felt a million little tingles run through my whole body, and I wanted more. I wanted him. My eyes weren't closed though, they were wide open and looking into Arden's. His eyes were dark, which signified his wolf's awakening. I pulled away quickly and immediately missed the feeling of his warm lips touching mine. I blushed and was surprised at his silence. If I knew that all it took for you to kiss me was a silver bullet coated with wolfsbane, and a week of unconsciousness, I would have taken a lot more of them a long time ago. He remarked, and I rolled my eyes. Well, you better not, since I would kill you first and then maybe kiss your handsome corpse. I said and then paused. That sounded so weird. Corpse kisser. Never took you to be the type. Once again I rolled my eyes. Thank you for taking care of the pack. It's my pack too, you know. An awkward silence commenced. The doctor entered once again and informed us that now that all the traces of wolfsbane was out of Arden's system, he would heal normally, and since he was an alpha he would be free to function after a day, which irritated Arden since he thought he was perfectly fine. You need to rest, Arden. I gave him an annoyed look, which he returned with a sheepish smile. I woke up in the middle of the night to see him not on the bed but in his office looking at a few files. He got up from his rotating chair and leaned against me, using the wall behind me as a tool to trap my body. Come on, little rogue. He whispered into my ear, and I shivered for two reasons: one, the feeling of his lips so close to mine, and second, his endearment for me. I am not exactly a rogue at the moment, Alpha, I whispered back. You will be one till your acceptance ceremony in front of the whole pack. And for me forever. His hand wrapped around my waist and his lips touched my neck. My body jerked and I pushed him off me. Go to sleep, Arden. I turned around to leave, but he caught my hand. Did you find it suspicious that the rogue were using guns? He asked me. Rogues prefer to use their strength to win, unless someone has provided them with a weapon to do a task. That person would also have to be rich, since rogues don't work for less. Also, they do not work in such large numbers naturally. I concluded, telling him everything about this attack that I found suspicious. He nodded his head and looked away, deep in thought. 19 teas. The breakfast laid on the table before my eyes was grand. There was everything from bacon to pancakes. On the center sat an extra large jug of cranberry juice, and I couldn't wait to dig in. I had learnt that it was Braylon's birthday today, and thus there was going to be a party held in the club hell in town. Everyone was invited, and since I was Arden's mate it was mandatory for me to attend. I didn't know when my birthday was, so I never celebrated it. I knew that I was legally 21 years old, but I didn't have any legal documents stating that I'm a real person. I sat down next to the alpha's seat and waited till all the pack house residents came down to eat. Arden had once again disappeared in the night, so I hadn't seen him since I woke up, which annoyed my wolf and I soon caught the woodsy pine scent that was more delicious than the food before me. Arden caught my eye and gave me a smile sitting beside me. A little while later Braylon, the birthday girl, entered, and we all sang her a uncoordinated and off-tune version of Happy Birthday. I was midway through eating my king-sized breakfast when I felt a hand on my thigh, and by the heat forming in my stomach, I knew exactly whose it was. I shifted my leg slightly, moving it towards the girl on my right, but Arden wasn't taking any of it. His hand went to stop further up and I held in an embarrassing squeal. "Move your hand, Arden," I said through gritted teeth. I was afraid to open my mouth in case any unwanted noises escape. "Wrong day to wear shorts. I think it is really comfortable there," he whispered. "Arden," I warned. "Little rogue." He copied my stiff tone. I gave him my best glare, which he returned with an amused grin. He wanted to play. Then I will show him the player. I put my hand on his and slowly trailed it up and down, letting the mating bond sparks do the work. When I saw him shiver slightly, I put my hand on his leg, taking it painfully close to his manhood. His body stiffened and his eyes shut for a second. I took a last bite of my scrambled eggs and stood up abruptly. "I'm full," I announced, and giving another smile to my pack and Braylon, I walked into the kitchen, dumping my plate into the sink. When I started to wash the plates, I felt a presence behind me. "What you did wasn't nice, Rose." Arden stood against the kitchen wall. "What you did wasn't ethical either." I fluttered my eyelashes rapidly. He stared at me for a second and walked closer, but at that moment a pack member entered the kitchen and looked at us suspiciously. "Alpha, Luna." She greeted us and I ran away from the kitchen to the bedroom. I needed to find something decent to wear to Braylon's party in the evening, but I gave up when the only thing I could find was jeans and tops. I heard a knock on the door and a voice called out, "Luna." I heard a voice call from the other side of the door. I went to open the door and saw Rianne on the other side. "She better not be here to tell me to stay away from my mate." "Yes," I said as neutrally as I could. "I got you a dress to wear for Braylon's party. I assumed that you probably didn't have anything to wear to a party, being a former rogue." She smiled, not looking at me in my eyes. I looked at the package suspiciously, wondering if she was actually saying the truth. "I also wanted to thank you for saving my life. You could have let me be, but you still defended me." My wolf still felt resentment against her, but she also felt her truthfulness. I took the black dress from her hand, gave her a grateful nod. "Thanks," I said hesitantly. She gave me a final smile and walked away. A little while later Arden entered the room with narrowed eyes. "Had Rianne come in here?" he asked, a bit hesitant, and I simply nodded. "Are you angry again?" "I swear I didn't call her here," he said, and I smiled. "I know she came to meet me." "Why? I mean, it's great that the two of you are getting along." Arden said it more in a questioning tone. "You'll see what it was about later." The evening approached faster than usual, and soon I was trying out the lace black dress that Rianne left for me. It was beautiful, but I doubt that it would fit me properly. It was a lace one-piece with long sleeves. The only problem was that it was a little loose and short on my lithe body that was made with years of running. But it didn't look bad. I put on the red borrowed lipstick and a little bit of mascara, but I was lost with the eyeliner, and not wanting to look like a raccoon, I decided that not experimenting would be a better idea. Arden had some work, so he left me a note saying that he would come directly to the club. On our journey to the club, I got a few compliments, to which I politely replied, and Drew went crazy with annoying pickup lines, which he stopped only after Castile threatened to call Arden. The club hell was quite fancy, with a mysterious feel coming out from it. The minute we entered, I was hit with the unique scent of werewolves everywhere. When werewolves get drunk, they can also shift unknowingly, so we have booked the whole club for today, Castile explained, and my mouth turned into an O. Music was blaring through the speakers, and as usual in a normal club scene, people were bobbing their head and moving their body carelessly to the sound of the music. Castile, Drew, a few pack members, and I got into a circle, pumping our fists to some loud EDM when I felt stranger hands touch my waist. Before I could lay a solid punch on my offender's face, I saw him fly across the room right into the bar. Surprised gasps echoed around the room, but some of the wolves didn't even look slightly fazed. Arden stalked towards the guy who was groaning with obvious pain and caught him tightly. As much as I myself wanted to punch the pervert wolf, I could see that he was completely wasted and killing him wasn't really necessary. I shifted slightly to go and stop Arden, but Castile caught my hand. Going near him when he is angry is not the best idea. I shook his hand off and went and stood right behind my mate. Arde, I was squished into his chest before I could say another word. I tried to push him away, but he growled and said, "My wolf wants his scent on you." I stood there in that awkward hug for about 5 minutes, after which Arden held my hand and spoke to the pack. "Eyes away from your Luna." The alpha tone resonated from his voice and I rolled my eyes. The music shifted to a soft swaying tone and I was pulled to the center of the dance floor. He held me so close to his body that I literally had no space to move and was tight against his body, but I didn't mind. Felt nice. "You look beautiful, little rogue," he murmured in my ear. 20 Mr. Bumblebee. After the long and tiring evening with Arden, I had a rather unsettling night that was marred with nightmares from my past. I saw him and I once again saw those cold walls that were almost as torturous as the whips that were cracked against my skinny body if I happened to look him in the eye. When I woke up from the nightmare, it was already morning and my heart filled with dread, as my mother, who was fairly superstitious, used to say that dreams seen after sunrise often came true. But that wasn't a dream, it was more of a memory. Warm hands once again wrapped around my waist and I took in a long breath. His sudden excessive touching after the awkward first kiss was unwillingly welcomed because of the comfort it brought, and over the last few days I found myself finding the smallest excuse to have some form of contact with him. "I felt the dread you felt, little rogue, and I'm feeling your fright," Arden whispered into my ear. "I'm not afraid," I said and turned to face him. The pillow wall was no use since it was often kicked off the bed by my ever-active legs. "Rose, please. These nightmares that you have are troubling my wolf and I. We need you to tell us what we have to protect you against." I didn't say anything and I could feel my silence riling him up. "Find me when you want to share." He got up abruptly and left the room, banging the door on his way out. "We are having your official ceremony to make you a part of the pack, and the Luna in the evening." Arden's voice sounded from behind me when I was attempting to read a book. It was tough for me since I had no proper education, and all the basic language writing skills were from what my mother could teach me in the dark dungeon. I hid the book under the pillow on my lap that I used to raise the level of it. Arden's eyes immediately went to the pillow, narrowed. "Tonight?" I asked a little breathlessly. "It's full moon. As a Luna, your introduction into the pack would be auspicious tonight." He paused. "What are you hiding?" I could hear the hurt in his voice. An embarrassed blush colored my cheeks as I showed him the children's book that I had found lying in the television room. "Hey, I have read fairy tales too, you know. If you want novels, then there's a library a little way down the road. I can get someone to get you a few." Arden smiled, amused, but his smile faltered when he saw my eyes slightly watery. "Little rogue, why are you crying?" "I am not reading this to refresh memories, Arden. I am reading a toddler's picture book because I never had an opportunity to. I cannot read." My voice went low in the end and I was seated in his lap in a jiffy. His hand started to stroke my hair gently, and I felt even more sorrowful remembering my mother's nurturing hands. We sat there in that position in silence for a long time before I heard Arden's deep voice narrating some sort of story. I raised my head to see him holding the book in his hands and moving a finger under each word he read, pronounced fully and slowly. Mr. Bumblebee was a very busy man. I looked at Arden, whose concentration was directed onto the book. He would go to work in the morning and come back in the night. My eyes were looking at his shifting gray ones. "Mrs. Bumblebee asked him to get a flower for Baby B." I heard the sweet words flow out of Arden's mouth in his usual husky tone. "Mr. Bumblebee forgot." I turned my body in his direction. "Baby B cried the whole night." I observed the shape of his perfectly straight nose. Mr. Bumblebee was very sorry. I remembered the taste of his beautiful pink lips. Baby B forgave his father. Those were the last words that I let Arden speak before my mouth found his. Unlike our first kiss, this wasn't a short peck. The moment my lips touched his, he gasped and his hands held my back, whereas mine wound around his strong neck. The temperature in my body at once went up by 100 degrees, And I was grateful that I was sitting because otherwise my jelly legs would have caused me an embarrassing fall. I felt his tongue probing my mouth gently, and I parted my lips enough to let him progress our kiss into a French one. This was my first kiss that involved tongues, but with Arden I wasn't scared of messing up. He dominated me, and for the first time I let him. It felt like we were kissing for hours when I was sure it hadn't even been a minute. We parted and I looked at him with a soft smile on my face. "Thank you," I said a little breathlessly. I didn't know what more to say, but then again neither did he. We both just sat staring at each other till his already lust-filled eyes went a little unfocused and I realized that he was mind-linking someone. "I have to go and help with something in the pack, so how about you come with me now and we'll continue the story of the Bumblebee family later?" Arden smiled. I got up from his lap and together we went to help with whatever the pack needed. As an alpha and a Luna, 21 official, I once again found myself wondering what to wear, and this time Rian didn't come with a dress as a peace offering and a thank you. Arden informed me that I was supposed to wear white, but I wasn't sure if he noticed that my cupboard only consisted of black and dark colors. I walked away from the closet door and was about to bury my head in the pillows in frustration, but instead came across a white cloth perfectly folded into a square. On further opening I saw that it was a full-length gown sort of dress with a sweetheart neckline and a sleeves that reached the elbows. It had the scent of Arden lingering on it. I breathed out a sigh of relief when I realized that the hunt for a dress wouldn't be necessary, and I smiled at the dress that Arden had left me. I got dressed up and was about to go down to the training lands where the whole ceremony was set up when Castile came up with a smile on his face. "Hey Luna." He gave me an air hug and I looked at him with confusion. He gave me a sheepish smile and scratched the back of his head. "You see, you're looking exceptionally beautiful today." He gave me a dazzling smile. "Not that you don't look beautiful every day, it's just that white gives you a look of innocence and not that I'm the queen of sass look. And if Arden, your extremely possessive mate, smells any male on you today, he would kill him. Also, today is a full moon, so all werewolf senses are heightened by a lot. So as much as I would love to give you a nice warm hug, I would also love to have all my body parts intact, so let's leave the hugging and other stuff to Arden, should we?" With those words he put a single finger on my back and guided me to the pack grounds where everyone gave me happy smiles. As I was looking around I felt the finger being replaced by a full palm and tingles spreading around the spot where it touched my bare skin. "You're looking ravishing today, little rogue," he murmured close to my ear, which made me shiver involuntarily. "All thanks to this gorgeous dress," I remarked back. "I think your beauty is the stronger factor here." "Well, of course my genes are also very helpful." I smirked slightly and looked at my mate, whose eyes were twinkling in delight. They had also darkened slightly, and I was sure that the emotion I could see in his eyes at that moment was lust. I really want to continue the story of the Bumblebee family right now. My body heated up at the mention of the children's fairy tale that would now signify a different kind of happiness in the future. Arden caught hold of my hand and pulled me onto the raised platform where Castile and Benjamin were already standing to the side. "Today we are here to welcome your Luna into the pack officially. She had already proven herself worthy of the supreme title twice, and both those times she has shown us all the qualities required in the leader of the pack. With this I would like to formally introduce my mate and your Luna, Rosemary Elizabeth Conrad, to the Sangre Lacos pack." Applause erupted from the pack, and I felt their acceptance raising the spirits of my already elated wolf. "Will you, my mate and the Luna, be loyal to the pack she leads?" "I will." "Will you take this pack to be your home and family?" "I will." I said again. "Will you protect and save this pack from all the harm that is possible within your power?" "I will." I said for the last time. He made a cut on his palm and passed me the knife. I made a deep gash in my palm and saw Arden wince. Once again Arden and my blood mixed and his husky voice spoke once again. "I, Alpha Arden Jackson, accept you, Lit Rosemary Conrad, into the Sangre Lacos pack as the Luna and a fellow pack member." My head immediately filled with the voices of my pack members sending me welcome messages, and my head hurt with the intensity. Being a rogue for 8 years made me unaccustomed to such a bond. "Are you okay, little rogue?" Arden asked me. "Not a rogue and not so little." He kissed the top of my forehead and the teenagers of the pack started to hoot. "Don't even try," he said, and I paused. After that we mingled with the pack and had a joint barbecue, which was a lot of fun, and Castile, who was attempting to show off his barbecuing skills, was accidentally pushed onto it by Drew, who was getting annoyed by his boasting. I sat down on one of the chairs on the side looking at Drew and Castile argue about who was more stupid and why. You must be tired, Rose. I think I should get you to bed. Arden sat down beside me. I'm not 5 Alpha, I'm 21, and we haven't even got a winner yet, I said, pointing at Castile and Drew, who gave me dark looks. Trust me, these two idiots can go at this all night long. Hey, the two mentioned idiots cried out, and I let out a laugh. You know, Arden, you seem to forget that I know you since a long time. Castile looked at Arden slyly. I don't think you want me to tell Rose about the time when you... That's enough, Arden said wide-eyed, and Cass and Drew laughed, and I looked at them curiously. What's our dear Alpha's little secret? 22 bro code. Arden sat on the bed with his face deep red with embarrassment. He was typing away on his laptop and grumbling under his breath about untrustworthy friends and brainless baboons, and I'm going to be honest, hearing those last two words come out from the mouth of a respectfully feared angry Alpha was hilarious. Stop laughing, little rogue. He glared at me, closing the screen of his laptop and turning towards me. It wasn't that funny. Oh, but it is. I giggled, and his mouth turned up very slightly before he faked a frown when he saw me smirk knowingly. I recalled the conversation that I was having previously with my idiotic friends. Tell me, I demanded, and Cass and Drew gave each other sly looks. Arden's eyes widened. Don't you dare. Arden growled out lowly. Well, you see, Cass started. As your Alpha, I'm going to command you to shut up and not tell her a word about what happened that night. It is meant to be buried deep inside the secure locker of the bro code. Drew scoffed. Please, the only reason you're using the term bro code is because you need something. You haven't signed the official pact that was made between Wesley, Castile, and I. You made an official agreement. I raised my eyebrows and a light blush covered their cheeks. I want to know this secret. We have the Alpha command binding us. They glowered. Well, then as your Luna, I command you to disclose important secrets. I smiled evilly. Arden sighed and then sat sullen in the corner of the room when Castile started the story. Once upon a time, and no need to prolong my embarrassment, Castile, just cut to the chase. Arden rolled his eyes at Drew's childlike behavior. Fine then, geez. The day before Wesley was getting married to Charlie, we had arranged for a bachelor party for him. Minus strippers, of course. We were all extremely bored, and Arden was behaving as if he had a stick up his arse, so we slipped in a roofie or 5 to make him a little more fun. But what this idiot didn't realize was that the roofie was very strong. Castile cut in. Everyone was dancing in the bar. A few with girls who were looking to have a good time, and all of a sudden the good old country music switched to Anaconda and the boys started to hoot. The next thing we saw was that Arden was in the middle of the room, holding a pole that was erected and doing an awkwardly sexual dance. The water that was in my mouth flew out like a jet and I choked. Arden patted my back and my eyes started to water. Drew thought it would make wonderful blackmail material, so he started to record it, and as he was fumbling with the buttons, Arden started to strip, and the girls who were there were thrilled to see a hot guy going naked and started to chant like crazy. In the werewolf world, we may be comfortable with nudity, but watching him hump the pole was a different matter altogether. We tried to get him off the stage as he belted out the lyrics of Anaconda loudly. Drew laughed, and not being able to control it any longer, I held my stomach, wheezing out at the mental picture that the boys painted for me. We got him to the pack house, and since his room was situated higher and he was pretty heavy, we thought of placing him in Braylon's room. He fell onto the bed, now reciting Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars, and he snatched Bray's favorite pink teddy, and didn't get it go till the next morning, but we did get a lovely snap of him clutching it in his sleep. What? Arden asked them wide-eyed. The rest of the day consisted in a whole amount of teasing from me directed towards my adorable mate, who avoided me at every turn. His ignoring got to me and I stalked into his office. I'll stop the teasing, just please don't ignore me. I gave him the best puppy dog look that I could muster up and he sighed. That's not the reason I'm ignoring you, little rogue. He got up and kissed my temple. But you are why? I asked. The Alpha of the Nightrise pack is being attacked and troubled by the rogues, and thus he wanted our assistance. I felt myself freeze. I don't exactly trust them, and therefore I'm going to put our pack on high alert while they are here, because 2 powerful alphas in a 10-mile radius is a very bad idea, and I don't want anyone, especially you, to get hurt. I kept quiet and felt my palms become clammy and my heart constrict in fear. 8 years and the memories were as fresh as yesterday. Rose. Yes, I said in a daze. You're scared. I can feel it, so don't even bother lying. If you don't trust them, why allow them onto your land? I ignored his question. Because if they are getting attacked too, they may know more about the rogue group formation, and if their numbers are really that high, then we may get a lot of assistance. We may be the strongest, but we are not invincible, and they also want to meet the new Luna of the Sangre Lacos. Arden said. The Silver Eclipse pack. James can help us if needed. They are too far, little rogue. They may not be able to help us when we need it. Why are you against the Nightrise pack? He cocked his head slightly to the side in his usual signature move of confusion. Post. Was it time to finally tell Arden about my past? I trusted him fully. It was just hard to bring up all these memories that I had blocked out all those years back. Arden. Castile poked his head inside the room, and I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding in. Arden looked at me, asking if it was fine to go, and I smiled encouragingly, and Castile waggled his eyebrows in my direction, giving me a suggestive look. 23 past horrors. I am an alpha's daughter. I told the mirror in front of me. What? Arden spoke from behind. I swirled around and cursed myself for not paying more attention to the sounds around me. I was say, but Arden cut me off. I knew that you had the aura of a former high-ranking member, but it was very faint, so I assumed that it was probably a gamma or a beta, but an alpha. Arden asked me wide-eyed. I sighed and then thought about how some things were better told unplanned. I walked over to where he was and sat cross-legged in front of him. I knew that at some point I would have to tell him about the devil who roamed my dreams. My father used to be the alpha of the Nightrise pack. I started and he looked at me with shock. He was about to say something, but I stopped him. Let me complete the story first, you'll understand everything. He nodded. When my mother was pregnant with me, there was a huge increase in the number of rogue attacks in our pack, and we knew they weren't random because they knew every pathway to the pack house and every safe room. It was a lot like the attack that happened in this pack, and in that attack my father was weakened and a majority of our pack members were injured, including my mother, who was hospitalized since she was extremely close to her due date. After a little digging around, we got to know that the mole was none other than my father's best friend and his trusted beta, Lincoln Dale. I said bitterly. He had teamed up with the rogues, killed my father in his weak state, and captured my heavily pregnant mother only for power. The death of my father was a huge shock on my mother, but since she was not his true mate, she was able to cope with it better. And then a few days after he attacked, she went into labor, and I was born in a dungeon with only the pack doctor there after a lot of pleading from my mother's side. I was born into an era of darkness. Those cold walls of the dungeon were what I thought was my home. They used to provide us with food, water, and plenty, and I never understood why. It would have been so much better if they had just killed us off. Those days my mother used to tell me stories and trace the alphabets on my arms and legs and teach me a few words like that. She used to sing to me every night before I went to sleep, but that was before Lincoln Dale started to use her. I choked back a sob and his hands reached out to mine. Bring her to the other cell. The bad guard told the other one. I saw the bad alpha. No, mother told me to call him the devil, not alpha. My daddy was the alpha. The devil walked into the corridor and gave us a sinister smile. Hello, Rosemary. He smirked and my mother pushed me behind her body. I will be needing your mother today. I had a rather bad day today, and I need to relieve my stress. He unlocked the cell and pulled my mother out and into the cell opposite to the one we usually lived in. The guards were sent out and the screams from my mother echoed off the walls. My 5-year-old self didn't know what's going on. All she knew was that her mother was getting hurt. I sat in the corner of my cell watching my mother get raped by a cruel man. He would repeat it. I choked and let out a sniffle. He would repeat this every day, and every day my mother would come next to me and cry but sing me a sweet song without a fail. Somewhere around the time when I turned 6 years old, my mother passed away because of all the torture she was given, and I was left alone, but I was glad she could escape the pain finally, even if it had to be in death. I got up and walked to the window looking at the dark sky outside, closing my eyes at the memories that I was once again recalling living. Every day the devil came to me and spoke to me for an hour, explaining what he was going to do to me. He would scar me a little and leave me till the next day when those horrid marks faded away. At first he couldn't kill me because he was sure that my mother would kill herself before he could get her pregnant, but now he saw another use in me. He wanted to get me pregnant. Arden roared and I flinched at the intensity of the sound. He picked up a lamp and sent it flying across the room. I inched toward his and wrapped my arms around his body, holding him close. When his breathing calmed down he said, "Continue, I'm fine." I nodded my head a little and started. Every day I spoke to myself. I narrated all that I thought about to the walls and sang songs that my mother taught me. He was waiting, and I knew that with my 13th birthday something horrible would happen to me. And that's when Drolane Blake entered my broken past. He acknowledged me as the alpha and promised me that he would rescue me. He did not disappoint. After a few frequent visits, he was suddenly appointed as my guard, and I was surprised because they had never been changed. The devil wanted to rape me and impregnate me, and he thought that he was old enough to have a few children, so he wanted me to carry them while I was still a child. On the eve of my 13th birthday, I heard the door open, and as I stood petrified next to the wall, I saw that it was Drolane. I looked at Arden, whose utmost attention was on the story of my horrid past. His breathing was heavy and his beautiful gray eyes black. He saved me, and I ran, but he couldn't save himself. I had freshly acquired my wolf, but since she knew that there was danger, she pushed herself to her full capacity. I was attached by a rogue, but I saved myself, and just as I was about to lose consciousness and my body was about to give up, I met James. The two of us sat silently for a long time, saying nothing but feeling everything. Arden and I hadn't started the mating process, but he could feel strong emotions. He pulled me close to his body and rested his chin on my head, and that's how we sat for a pretty long time. 24 barriers. That man is not going to enter our packlands if he wishes to stay alive for another day. Arden growled at Castile, who was telling Arden that Lincolndale was waiting for permission on our borders along with 30-something pack members. Arden was the only one who knew who Lincolndale actually was. He was known as one of the cruel alphas, but his past was unheard of. His deeds hidden from the werewolf world. Castile thought that angering the alpha of the Nightrise pack would be a very bad idea. But I knew for a fact that if the devil was brought before Arden, an ugly fight would resume. The loyalty for your alpha exceeds the need for good morals and rightful decisions, and the Nightrise pack teamed up with unruly rogues would cause enough damage and pain to last a long time. But Alpha, Castile addressed Arden by his pack title. You are the one who agreed to have a meeting with him, and he used this as an incentive to attack. Not before we attack them. Arden growled. Arden, we can't attack them. Not without a proper plan and enough support. They have groups of rogues who play dirty and won't be stopped by their conscience. I said. I knew that there would be a time where I would kill Lincolndale and win back my alpha title, but at that time I had only myself to lose. Now I have a whole pack. They may have a bunch of rogues, but I have the alliance of 2 strong packs if needed. Arden growled. Wait, alpha title? Castile asked, confused, and I remembered that he was yet there along with Benjamin, the Gamma. Rose will explain it to you later, but for now send those bastards back. Yes, Alpha. Cass and Ben said together and walked out of the room. We can't ask James and Killian to fight my battles. I'm not going to allow it. I exclaimed. They would help us without the blink of an eye, little rogue. But Killian has his own problems to deal with. I'm talking about another Alpha. Arden informed me. You have friends? I asked him with a teasing smile. Of course I do, little rogue. He said with a playful shove, and I giggled. But this Alpha is not a friend. More like an alliance, or an even better term for it is a favor. They own me. Who? I scrunched my eyebrows. Elias Martinez. I've heard of him. Patricia used to gush about how hot he is almost all the time. I am hot. He's just a pup. Arden growled. A cute pup. I informed him. Before I knew it, my back was against the wall and his lips were just a centimeter away from mine. His scorching gaze traveled down my body, and I felt my own wolf skipping around the back of my head, making a barely noticeable purr slip out of my lip. I always found it fascinating that female wolves purr like a kitten when they are happy. He smirked against my lips. How many wolves have you made purr? I exclaimed and faked an angry expression. I was still enjoying the feel of his body against mine, and I wasn't going to be mad at him anytime soon. In real. None. I swear, my little rogue. He murmured against my lips, and I swear that my heart skipped a beat. His endearment for me made a wave of happiness spread through my body, making me all warm and tingly. I raised myself on my toes slightly and made my lips touch his warm ones. It was just a short peck, followed by another one and more. We teased each other with sweet kisses, and I heard Arden growl before capturing my lips in a deeper lip lock. His hands rested on my lower back, holding me to his body tightly with barely ant space left between us. You're intoxicating. His husky words flowed into my ears. And I'm yours. I kissed his cheek once and let my hand brush his hair slightly. And a tease apparently. He gave me a pointed look and I shrugged my shoulders. A girl's got to do what she has to. I sang and laughed while walking out of his office. The place where everything originates. I don't want to make any babies in there. I saw Castile walking towards me with a grim expression on his face. He hurried his steps and gave me a small nod before walking into the office I previously was in. My curiosity pulled me towards the office door and I put my ear gently on the wood. I couldn't hear them say anything and realized that the door might have been soundproof. I frowned and turned around, but just then the door opened. "Haven't you ever heard, Rosie, that eavesdropping is bad?" Castile asked me with forced lightness. "I've heard it, but since when do I do things that I am told to?" I asked him. He rolled his eyes but gave me a genuine smile. I looked at Arden's eyes and was not shocked to see that they were black. There was a sort of anger that was set into his eyes ever since I opened up about my past to him, but now that was multiplied. I touched his arm gently and tilted my head. "What's wrong?" I asked, but the question was directed towards Castile, knowing that Arden would choose not to answer and that he would like me to be in the dark, knowing nothing. "Do not answer that question, Beta," he ordered, and I turned to him annoyed. "You never want to tell me," I said angrily and almost stomped my foot in frustration. "I want to know, Arden, what happened that has made you so serious? What happened with the Devil and the Nightrise Pact members?" I knew that I was behaving like a spoiled child, but he was my mate, not my father, and I was not going to be treated like a newly shifted pup. At his silence I growled and stalked away, leaving the door open, and I heard a loud sigh from behind me. 25 marked Arden's POV. I sighed loudly and ran a hand through my hair, messing it up unintentionally. My little rogue's anger towards me frustrated my wolf and I to no end, but I had to do what I can to protect my mate from every problem of the world and keep her safe by my side. "Go to her, Arden, she's a stubborn wolf." Castile nudged me slightly and I started to go towards our room in long strides and an underlying feeling of annoyance. I had to do whatever I could to keep her safe, and when Castile told me that Lincolndale has threatened us to hand over Rose to them, or expect a war upon us, my anger knew no bounds. The only reason I didn't throw an alpha version of a serious hissy fit was because I smelt the sweet scent of my mate lingering outside the door and realized that she was overhearing our conversation. I turned the doorknob of our room cautiously and poked my head into the room, taking in the scene before I entered. "Little rogue," I called out in a soft voice. I could sense her in the room, but I couldn't see her anywhere. I walked in confused and raised my hand to knock on the bathroom door twice when the curtain moved and I felt a pair of warm arms try to engulf my body in a hug. "I'm sorry for being such a bitch," her ringing bell chime voice spoke, but it came out muffled and I could guess that the reason was her cheek pressed against my back. I turned her around and kept my right hand firmly on her neck, with only my thumb stroking her soft, slightly wet cheeks. My heart clenched at the thought of her crying again. "Were you crying?" I asked, and she stilled for a second before she slowly nodded her head. "It wasn't because of you," she assured me, and then gave me a small smile that seemed a little forced. "I hate to see you cry," I told her. "Technically, you didn't," she cheekily replied, and I gave her a flat expression. "I'm sorry, that was not something to joke about," she mumbled with a little frown, and I couldn't help but smile at the look of innocence. She may be a fiery, sarcastic girl with trust issues who pretended that she didn't give a damn about anything, but I knew that it was only a facade to hide her pain and her past. Her long dark hair wasn't in her usual braid but was instead freely flowing down her back, and in such a moment I could not help but think of a few forbidden thoughts. "You have the weirdest and worst time sense of humor," I stated, and her eyes narrowed. "Please, I have the wittiest comebacks ever," she scoffed. "Little rogue, you're not going to convince me." I felt one side of my mouth pull up in a familiar smirk. "I have a few tricks up my sleeve." She shifted her weight on the other foot. "I'm sure that my ways will be more effective than your ways," I countered, moving towards the other side of the room and taking her with me. Her eyes darkened slightly, and I didn't know what was going to her mind, but the expression I caught onto was clear. Lust. "You know, you may not be my first kiss." The burning feeling of hatred rose in my mind for that man who stole my mate's first kiss, "but you're certainly the best," she finished, grinning. "Any particular reason you brought that up?" I rose an eyebrow. "'Cause I want you to kiss me, you idiot." She didn't need to tell me twice as my lips captured hers in a gentle kiss. Her face was still set in a grin and it felt weird to kiss, But the electric feeling and adrenaline rush did not lessen. I used both my hands to hold her face in place, while her hands gave her support by touching the wall beside the bedpost. "You're so beautiful, little rogue," I said in between kisses, and she let out a breathless laugh. "Well, I know, but you're no less Arden." She gave me a cheeky grin, and I could swear that my heart momentarily stopped. She wrapped her hands around my neck, and I tried to remove every little space from between us. I moved my hands from her face and placed in on her lower back, kissing along her jawline, grazing her cheeks and gently nibbling her earlobe. She audibly took in a long breath, and I smiled. "I love you, little rogue," I said with a slight hesitation. I wasn't sure if she loved me back yet, but I had hope. But the mate bond couldn't force you to love someone. It doesn't influence the decisions of your heart, but rather it urges you to love the one perfect for you. The other half of you who will stay by your side no matter what. It brings lust and want for that person who the moon goddess has declared worthy of you. Yes, I wanted my mate before, but now I needed her. Like a fish needed water and humans air to breath. Without her my life was incomplete, and I wanted her to know that. I don't think that I feel the same way, Arden," she said with a masked expression. I felt my whole body freeze in shock, and I let my hands fall to my sides limp. My throat felt tight, and she let out a loud laugh. "I don't feel the same way because, yes, I am in love with you, but my love for you is way stronger than your love for me." She smiled. I laughed a breathy laugh at that, but it was one of relief. "I don't think that's possible, little rogue. Want to test that?" She smirked, but there was an upcoming blush present on her cheeks. She came closer to me and started to kiss me again, full of passion and love. My lips trailed on her neck, and I felt my entire body get excited in the anticipation of my mark, resting on the delicate skin of her neck. I teased her, and she let out a low moan. I didn't want to rush her with anything, especially after knowing her whole past, but I was so tempted to lay my mark on her. "Can I mark you?" I asked her with my hoarse voice. "Yes," she replied with a strong contender to mine. I took a pause for barely a millisecond before my lips attacked her neck, sucking and gently nipping, readying her skin. I looked at her plain neck for a minute, imagining my mark on her, and I saw her squirm. I bit down on the crook between her neck and shoulder and licked off the blood that was seeping out of the wound. I felt a warm feeling spread through my entire body. "Your turn," she said with lidded eyes. She repeated the same process as I did on her neck, and in a short time I felt a searing pain go through my body, which was replied with a wave of immense pleasure. We both looked at each other with tired eyes full of love and tiredness. I lifted her up and laid her gently on the bed. "I love you, Arden," she whispered sleepily. "I love you too, little rogue." 26 Ultimatum. I pulled away the top of my t-shirt from my neck, and using the reflection of the bathroom mirror, I saw the puncture marks that rested on the crook of my neck. I gently touched them with the tip of my index finger, cherishing the feel of having my mate's mark on my skin. A smile came over my entire face that was so wide that I could swear that I could see all my 32 teeth. "Little rogue, you've been in the bathroom for a long time now, care to come out?" Arden knocked the door with an impatient sigh. I turned the door knob, only to drool over a shirtless Arden standing with his arms crossed in front of his bare chest and a concentrated frown on his face. "You're always frowning, Arden, learn to smile a little, will you?" I grinned when I saw the corner of his mouth tug up slightly. "I always smile when I'm with you, little rogue." I leaned against the door and gave him an incredulous expression. "No, it's a 50-50, you smile some and you frown some." He shook his hand in an attempt to brush off the topic. "That's not important, I really need to go where you just came out from, so if my dearest marked mate will excuse me." He gave me a gentle shove, entered the bathroom and attempted to close the door, but before he could I kissed his mark, and the result was almost instant. I found myself wrapped in my mate's arms once more, kissing feverishly and greedily. The marking had mixed our scents together, and it made my wolf extremely excited. Our bond was stronger than ever before, and so was my desperate desire to give myself up to him completely, but I wasn't sure I was ready. Scars took time to heal, and while mating may be considered something special and pure, I had seen my mother get raped. Not by her mate, of course, but a thing like that sticks in your mind and haunts you. "Little rogue, as much as I'm enjoying this, you need to stop tempting me and luring me away from the bathroom," he whispered in my ear, slightly nibbling my ear lobe. "How about a no?" I whispered back. "You'll regret this, little rogue." I'll only ever regret letting you go. I smiled, and giving him a last little kiss, I walked out of the room, desperate for a good heavy breakfast since my stomach was getting hunger pangs and I needed to fill it up. I almost skipped down the stairs and I noticed that the pack members near me were looking unusually cheerful. A few of them have me knowing looks and whispered within themselves with smirks on their faces, but I knew what they were saying. The Luna is marked. Good morning, Castile, Benjamin. I greeted the Beta and the Delta. Congratulations, Luna. Ben wished me and I thanked him. Castile cocked his head to the side and observed me for a few moments before taking a sniff of the surroundings, his eyes lighting up. You're marked, he said, and I rolled my eyes. I don't know what gave it away to my Beta, Arden said dryly, coming from behind me and resting his hand on my lower back, but I could sense his happiness stronger than ever now. Don't be mean, Arden. Cassie is just a little, slow in understanding such matters. I laughed and Castile glared at me. He was dropped on his head when he was a baby, can't really blame him. Benjamin butted in. Don't look at her like that, Arden ordered Castile, who switched his glare to Arden. He was about to say something when the window broke into pieces and glass shards came flying towards myself with speed. I covered my head as a reflex reaction, but I didn't feel anything touch me. I opened my eyes to see Castile, Benjamin and Arden standing in front of me with broken glass pieces sticking to their bodies. Are all of you okay? I asked out of habit, though it was clear that the cuts were deep. We were werewolves, but blood loss is dangerous for us. I checked Arden to see if there were any deep cuts and was satisfied when I saw that he had only suffered from minor scratches. The same was the story with Benjamin, but Castile had a piece logged into his arm which I pulled out to prevent infection, wrapping a cloth I saw nearby around his arm. Alpha Arden Jackson, a male voice called from outside. His voice was one of a father's, sturdy but caressing, but I knew that whatever he was here for, it wasn't good. Arden's eyes were black and he marched to the broken window with his body shaking in rage. Deep growls were rumbling at the back of his throat, and despite my protests, Castile also followed Arden. By now a majority of the pack was coming out and going to the lawn with growls of hatred echoing off the trees. A circle was formed around the single man who stood there, with a face to match his voice and a solemn expression on his face. Arden caught his neck and started to choke him. I rushed forward and the pack parted to let me to the center. The man's honey eyes flickered to me and recognition flashed in them, and then surprise. Who sent you? Arden growled, but the man's eyes stayed locked on mine. Who sent you? Arden roared this time, and everyone flinched at the intensity of their alpha's command. Alpha Lincoln. He was thrown down the minute the devil was mentioned. The man held his throat and was looking around with fearful eyes, but even in them I saw a little hope when they met mine. Arden, noticing where his eyes were, stood in front of my body, covering me from the man's view. The Alpha wants her. He pointed at me. He has sent me with an ultimatum. Hand her over or expect your pack destroyed. He murmured softly. Arden went over to him. I knew what was coming, and as much as I wanted to, I couldn't look away. I stood frozen on my spot as Arden killed him right in front of all of the pack minus the pups. But before that the man had closed his eyes and said two words that made the entire pack's eyes snap to me. Alpha Conrad. Don't let the story end. Subscribe to continue our wolf pack legend.